We are going to start with one of the biggest stories we have been following for over a week now, and that is the escalating situation over in the Middle East. Bringing us out to this, it's live
at 1:37 a.m. in the barren desert of northern Mexico. A satellite captured an alarming sight, a massive convoy belonging to the Sinaloa Cartel stretching for miles. Cloaked in darkness, they moved silently, hundreds of armored vehicles packed with heavy machine guns and tons of drugs. Confident they were undetected, they believed they were invisible. But just 30 minutes later, an unimaginable event unfolded, shattering the cartel's arrogance and forever altering the course of the war on drug crime. What happened in that moment? Leave a comment below and join us as we uncover the shocking truth behind the devastating ambush where advanced technology, strategy, and military might turn this deadly convoy into a metal graveyard. Fire down, fire! At 1:37 a.m., satellite data in northern Mexico captured a sprawling convoy making its way along the desert supply routes. The line of vehicles stretched for miles, armored SUVs at the front, technical trucks armed with heavy machine guns, in the middle flanked by fuel trucks, trailers, and those loaded with drugs. Inside, fighters were armed with RPGs, rifles, and stolen military gear. The plan was simple: move north under the veil of darkness, believing they were undetected, but they were gravely mistaken. Navy SEALs were stationed in the mountains above the valley, waiting in silence. Above them, U.S. Air Force units, fighter jets, drones, and attack aircraft hovered in readiness. The cartel convoy believed they were invisible, moving under the cover of darkness. But in reality, they were already marked. For days, U.S. intelligence had been tracking their every move. Reconnaissance satellites spotted cartel personnel assembling near their strongholds, while drones confirmed the movement of high-value leaders in armored SUVs. The convoy was no longer undetected, it was a target locked in. Wiretaps provided critical intel on the cartel's drug shipment, confirming that the convoy was transporting not only drugs and weapons, but also high-ranking lieutenants. This made it a prime target. But what the cartel didn't realize was that the route they had chosen was a carefully planned kill zone. U.S. policymakers had analyzed every choke point, and explosives were buried beneath the sand, ready to detonate. SEAL teams had been inserted by helicopter days earlier, with snipers strategically positioned on the ridges, their sights trained on the desert road. The Americans didn't need to act, they simply waited. The ambush erupted as the convoy entered the valley. SEAL snipers unleashed their fire on the lead vehicles, striking with deadly precision. The first SUV swerved as its driver was killed instantly. A second shot crippled the engine of the vehicle behind it, sending the convoy into chaos. Trucks collided in the darkness, their brakes screeching as fighters scrambled out, shouting orders and fleeing down the hill. Believing it was just a small-scale ambush, they ran for cover. They were gravely mistaken. Within seconds, the entire convoy's radio systems went silent. U.S. electronic warfare units had jammed all cartel communications, leaving them blind and vulnerable. Orders couldn't be relayed. Panic set in as chaos overtook the convoy. Engines revved, but no one knew which direction to move. The convoy stalled, trapped on both sides. At 1:48 a.m., the Air Force made its move. The silence was shattered by the roar of thunder from above. F-15. E-Strike Eagles unleashed precision-guided bombs on the convoy's rear. Fuel trucks were instantly engulfed in flames, sending fireballs soaring into the sky and lighting up the desert for miles. Secondary explosions ripped through ammunition trucks, further decimating the convoy. Survivors scrambled to escape, but MQ-9 Reaper drones locked onto their every move, turning any hope of flight into a futile effort. Hellfire missiles streaked down, locking onto command SUVs that had been pre-marked by drones. Within seconds, the entire leadership element was obliterated. Then the deafening roar of 10 Warthogs filled the valley. Their 30mm guns unleashed a storm of tungsten rounds, shredding trucks and tearing through the convoy. Gunners were cut down before they could even think of reloading. The attack came from all directions, air and ground, front and rear at the same time. In a desperate attempt to fight back, cartel fighters fired RPGs into the sky, their missiles cutting through the night. They missed. Machine guns fired wildly at the ridges, desperately trying to suppress the unseen snipers. Mortars were launched into the valley, but U.S. counter-battery radar immediately pinpointed their locations. Artillery fired back, and M777 howitzers struck directly at the mortar teams, silencing them. In just 15 minutes after the first shot, the once dominant convoy descended into complete chaos. Engines sputtered, and stalled vehicles burned, and fighters panicked under the relentless barrage of fire. SEAL teams triggered explosives placed at key choke points, creating massive blasts that funneled the remaining vehicles into smaller, more vulnerable clusters. Attempts to retreat were futile as trucks slammed into the burning wreckage scattered across the valley. The once sprawling convoy, now reduced to chaos, was completely trapped in kill zones. U.S. artillery hammered the clusters, relentlessly obliterating supply trucks and tearing apart technical vehicles. Apache helicopters swooped in, launching Hellfire missiles at any remaining SUVs that dared to move. The valley was engulfed in an orange glow from the explosions. Cartel fighters cowered behind doors and obstacles, firing in disarray, but every position had already been mapped. SEAL spotters guided precise airstrikes with laser designators, ensuring that each target was tracked and swiftly eliminated. By 2 a.m., the cartel attempted to regroup. Armored SUVs surged forward, turrets blazing as fighters darted between RPG trucks, shouting orders and trying to form a counterattack. Mortar fire echoed from the rear once again, and for a fleeting moment it seemed they might break through. But the U.S. response was swift and decisive. Apache helicopters unleashed Hellfire missiles into the advancing SUVs, ripping them apart mid-motion. Snipers took out RPG gunners before they could even launch their missiles. Adheres dropped precision bombs on fleeing groups, tearing through the fighters with devastating cannon fire. The assault ended in wreckage and eerie silence. By 2:05 a.m., the Sinaloa convoy, once stretching for miles with hundreds of vehicles, was completely surrounded. Fires raged across the valley, casting an ominous glow over the wreckage. Fighters were scattered, some firing wildly, others fleeing into the desert. The Americans tightened their grip. The kill zone was fully activated, and the convoy was methodically erased piece by piece. The first wave had shattered the cartel's confidence, but the Air Force wasn't finished. From high above, another pair of F-15E Strike Eagles unleashed precision bombs into the densest part of the formation. Explosions sent vehicles tumbling through the air like mere toys. Fuel trucks detonated in massive secondary explosions, igniting furious fires that spread across the desert. Survivors who had believed they had escaped the initial assault were suddenly engulfed by new fireballs. Meanwhile, Reaper drones stalked the stragglers, their sensors locking onto heat signatures. Each Hellfire missile, guided by lasers, struck with pinpoint accuracy, slamming into SUVs and technical vehicles. In seconds, the rear of the convoy was obliterated. Any hope of retreat was crushed. The deafening roar returned as 10 Warthogs swooped in, their engines thunderous as they dove in for another brutal attack run. The 30mm guns roared again, releasing a torrent of rounds per second. Tracer streams sliced through the desert air, shredding technical vehicles into mangled wrecks. Gunners attempting to fire from their positions or take cover behind truck bodies were instantly cut down. Survivors tried to flee their vehicles, but there was no place to hide. The desert floor glowed with the inferno of burning wreckage. Cartel fighters dove into ditches for cover, but drones tracked their every move, marking them for follow-up strikes. The convoy wasn't simply attacked, it was being methodically wiped out. By 2:12 a.m., SEAL teams began advancing from the ridges, closing in on what was left of the destruction. Using night vision and infrared lasers, the SEAL teams descended into the valley. Rifles raised, suppressed shots rang out amid the chaos, cutting down cartel fighters attempting to regroup near trucks. The teams moved methodically, clearing each vehicle. Doors were ripped open and flashbang grenades exploded inside, blinding anyone inside. Those who resisted were shot on sight. Those who surrendered were quickly bound on the ground. High-value targets were dragged from armored SUVs, their weapons seized. Lieutenants who had once believed they were in control of the convoy now lay face down alive, but captured. Artillery batteries shifted their fire-targeting escape routes with deadly precision. M777 howitzers shelled both ends of the valley, completely sealing it off. Any vehicle trying to flee was instantly met with a barrage of explosives. Engineers detonated more pre-placed charges along desert routes, obliterating choke points and driving the remaining fighters back into the kill zone. Apache helicopters circled overhead, Hellfire missiles tracking every movement below. Thermal sensors locked onto fleeing survivors, ensuring that every escape attempt was swiftly cut off. The trap grew tighter, closing in on the last remnants of the convoy. Small groups of cartel fighters made one last attempt at a stand, forming RPG teams behind burning wreckage, launching missiles at the SEALs and circling aircraft. The shots flew high, missing their targets entirely. Within seconds, snipers picked off the gunners with deadly precision. Mortar teams tried to return fire, but U.S. counter-battery radar quickly pinpointed their positions. Artillery fired back shells, slamming directly into the mortar teams, silencing them once and for all. Fighters trying to use machine guns and technical vehicles were torn apart by A-10 rounds. The last remnants of resistance crumbled. By this point, the SEALs were inside the convoy, moving methodically between the burning wreckage. They cleared out the remaining fighters, hiding behind doors and truck bodies, taking them down with suppressed rifles at close range. Stun grenades disoriented the survivors, creating confusion before the army stormed in. The cartel fighters dropped their weapons and raised their hands in surrender. Dozens gave up immediately, while others panicked, fleeing into the vast desert. But the Apaches tracked their movements and eliminated them with precision. Within minutes, the most fortified section of the convoy, the middle part, was secured. Trucks carrying drugs were marked with infrared for confiscation, while everything else was destroyed. By 2:25 a.m., the Americans had gained full control at every level of the battle. The Air Force obliterated everything that moved, while drones scanned the entire area, locking onto any survivors. Artillery blocked all potential escape routes. SEAL teams methodically pushed through each vehicle, ensuring the valley was secure. Engineers planted explosives to dismantle the heavily damaged vehicles that couldn't be recovered. By this point, half of the convoy lay in smoldering wreckage across the desert. The air was thick with smoke fire and the crackling sounds of bullets still echoing from the destroyed trucks. The survivors knew the convoy was no longer a force to be reckoned with. Hundreds of vehicles had been wiped out. The commanders were either dead or captured. The fighters scattered, and leaderless were terrified and demoralized. Every counterattack failed. Radios jammed beyond repair were silent. Drones hovered overhead, ensuring there would be no chance to regroup. At this point, it was no longer a battle, it was a purge. The once formidable Sinaloa convoy, which had entered the valley with confidence and firepower, now lay in ruin, a steel graveyard. By 2:30 a.m., U.S. forces had complete control over the eradicated area. Fires raged throughout the valley and the wreckage glowed brightly in the night. Prisoners were captured and drugs were seized. Do you support the war to eliminate these gangs? If yes, comment number 2. If no, comment number 5. What had once been seen as a display of power by the cartel was now almost over. As the valley was sealed off and the convoy burned, the teams pushed deeper into the wreckage. Moving in small squads, rifles raised, they checked every vehicle, cautious of any intact truck that could pose a threat. Doors were wrenched open, stun grenades thrown inside, and cartel fighters dragged out. Many resisted, drawing handguns or knives, but they were shot on sight. Others, blinded by the light, immediately dropped their weapons and fell to the ground, surrendering without a fight. The senior lieutenants, disoriented and in shock, were handcuffed and dragged from the armored SUVs. The convoy's leadership crumbled instantly. Small groups of gang fighters attempted to regroup, but it was futile. The technical vehicles that hadn't been destroyed yet fired wildly from the truck bodies, spraying tracer rounds into the night. RPGs were launched at the SEAL teams as they moved between the vehicles, but the response was swift and overwhelming. Snipers eliminated the gunners before they could fire a second shot. Apache helicopters launched Hellfire missiles at the technical vehicles, reducing them to rubble in seconds. An RPG team tried to fire from behind the burning wreckage, but their efforts were quickly neutralized. The RPG missed and exploded harmlessly on the sand, and the team was taken down immediately after. Every attempt at regrouping ended the same way, wiped out in seconds. Above F-15E aircraft dropped the final precision bombs on the remaining survivor groups at the edge of the valley. Explosions tore through several vehicles still trying to move. Drone footage captured the fire spreading for miles, with every escape route blocked by burning wreckage. The survivors abandoning their vehicles were relentlessly hunted down by drones and marked for the Apache helicopters. The desert ground glowed like a furnace and there was no escape. By 2:42 a.m., the convoy was completely obliterated. More than half of the vehicles were destroyed beyond recognition. The remaining vehicles were either disabled, captured, or abandoned. The warriors were scattered across the valley, taking cover in ditches or surrendering to the advancing SEAL teams. Prisoners were bound together on the ground. Drug shipments were secured and tow trucks were marked for confiscation. Engineers placed explosives on every non-recoverable vehicle, ensuring nothing of value was left behind. The battlefield was now fully under U.S. control. The surviving cartel fighters knew there was no leadership left, no communication, no reinforcements. Every position had been mapped and every movement was tracked. What had started as a powerful display of cartel strength, with hundreds of vehicles lined up, was now reduced to silence fire and wreckage. For the SEAL teams, the mission had shifted from fighting to cleanup. For the Air Force, it had transitioned from attack to surveillance, confirming that nothing was moving. Nothing remained intact. By 2:48 a.m., the convoy had disappeared. The valley had become a graveyard littered with burning vehicles, captured fighters, and destroyed weapons. The largest attack by the Sinaloa cartel was shattered in less than an hour. By the early hours, the battlefield fell silent. Fires still raged across the valley, consuming the damaged vehicles and filling the desert with thick smoke. Drone footage confirmed what those on the ground had already witnessed: the convoy had vanished. Trucks were overturned and ablaze. SUVs lay in ruins and technical vehicles were twisted into heaps of steel. Prisoners were bound together and guarded by SEALs, while high-value lieutenants were airlifted for interrogation. Drug shipments were seized from the tow trucks, stacked and marked for transport. The ambush of the Sinaloa convoy in the Mexican desert served as a powerful reminder of the effectiveness of preparation and coordination. The success of the Navy SEALs and the United States Air Force wasn't just about advanced weaponry, it was rooted in meticulous planning, precise intelligence gathering, and synchronized execution. This operation demonstrated that no matter how formidable an opponent may be, arrogance and complacency can lead to catastrophic failure. In every challenge, it's the combination of careful preparation, unity, and strategy that holds the key to overcoming any obstacle. As dawn broke over the Mexican desert, only plumes of black smoke and hundreds of charred vehicle wrecks remained the remnants of the most powerful convoy the Sinaloa cartel had ever deployed. In less than an hour, the flawless ambush by the Navy SEALs and the United States Air Force transformed the cartel's symbol of strength into a stark reminder no force can escape the precision of military technology and strategy. What are your thoughts on this historic battle? Do you think the Sinaloa cartel can recover from this devastating defeat? Share your opinions in the comments below, and don't forget to like and share the video to explore more thrilling stories together.